Did you see what Joy Behar said? She apparently thinks of herself as more important than she is because Joy literally believes Donald Trump is going to have her taken off the air if he becomes president, which he did last time, but as comical as that sounds, it's actually a fear that stretches several years back, making even less sense as time goes on. Subscribe to the channel and listen to what she said in the conversation with comedian Wanda Sykes before I tell you more about it.
So, Wanda, the other day on this show, we were talking about what happens if Trump gets in, God forbid, and he goes after comedians like us, you and me and Whoopi, and do you think there's a problem if he gets in for us?
Well, I mean, maybe we can share a cell.
I don't think so.
I mean, it's ridiculous. I mean, it is. But I know you're making a joke about it, but it could really happen. He could.
Course.
I mean, he wants to be a dictator.
He has a sense of humor.
He wants to be a dictator.
Oh, really? That's right.
No,
that's right.
No.
We'll hold her to that.
Yeah,
Yes,
right.
And he's kind and sweet and lovely.
Well, he
and a DJ on
he
the
has
side.
a good sense of,
and he loves
he's
animals.
all those things when he's not sexually assaulting women. He's all those things. I'm sure.
The gloves are off today.
Yeah.
The last part is a perfect example of how you can go too far in comedy to the point that it gets you in trouble. The View panel, especially an attorney like Sunny Hostin, understands the incredibly thin line in vocabulary when it comes to an allegation like that. But even if you look past that, just how big of an influence do you think you have to be to imagine that a president is going to shut you down for it? And not just that, but Joy Behar just said that there assumes a very different America than the one that exists, where presidents can somehow take comedians off the air at will. Needless to say, that's not how things work. Just look at the kind of animosity we've seen between Trump and comedians like Jimmy Kimmel. And of course, Jimmy still continues with his political-themed comedy. And when your comedy can poke fun at politics, that's a sign that there's still a kernel of democracy and free speech in the country left. By the way, it's interesting that Joy Behar would scaremonger about a potential Trump presidency jailing comedians left and right when she's literally called for all Republicans to go to jail at one point.
You know what I was thinking? I was thinking Nixon would be so... He says I was in the wrong period of history because he would have gotten away with everything just like this corrupt president is getting away with. This is an unbelievable corrupt president, corrupt administration, and the Republican Party is right behind him, and they all should be thrown into jail as far as I'm concerned.
It's amazing how old statements can come back to bite you, but it really does reveal the sheer disconnect between her words and her actions over something like this. Not to mention the idea that Donald Trump is even capable of jailing someone unilaterally sounds a lot like the political naivete that we heard from Whoopi Goldberg a few months ago, when she said presidential immunity for a president means he could do anything. Look at this incredible statement she said not too long ago.
Yesterday, the Supreme Court agreed to hear you-know-whose case for total presidential immunity from prosecution. It has halted proceedings in the election interference case against him. Now, let's look at a scenario where the Supreme Court says, yes, he has that, he has all those rights, he is immune from everything.
Yeah.
You know what Joe Biden could do since he is presently president?
What?
Whoa. He could throw every Republican in jail.
Yeah.
I mean, he could. I mean, no. This is not
Because
a good
he would be
thing.
immune.
Because he'd have total, he could go. What this means is he could do anything.
Yeah.
In a sane world, that would be an immediate disqualifier for ever being taken seriously, and yet The View continues to be seen as a legitimate platform of political conversation that still believe in the mainstream media. And did she just say a president could throw every Republican in jail, nearly half of the American voter base? Both Whoopi Goldberg and Joy Behar have been trolled online for those outlandish ideas, but it's clear not the first time that we're seeing them. Joy in particular has said this plenty of times, including floating the idea that The View itself could be taken off the air under a Trump presidency, rather than just the individuals. The First Amendment, thankfully, is a very robust piece of legislation, and it doesn't matter how much you think a political leader wants you off the air, there are enough checks and balances in place to make sure that's never possible. Both Joy Behar and Whoopi Goldberg probably already know that at the back of their mind, but that clearly makes for a more rational political conversation that you can't expect to find from The View. And by the way, this is probably the third or fourth time that Joy has floated this outlandish idea in the last few years. Watch her say something similar in the conversation with MSNBC's Rachel Maddow, continuing the empty scaremongering that you see in a large segment of the media, when it comes to a second Donald Trump presidency.
So let me ask you this, because there's been a lot of talk about Trump seeking retribution if he gets into office, for his legal troubles, for his personal troubles, for his hair, whatever. He always has somebody to blame, you know? So you said recently that you thought that you, as an outspoken critic, could be a target yourself. Some people think that sounds overdramatic, but I'm right there with you. I think that he is so vindictive that he will go after, however he has to, through the IRS maybe, or even through sponsors to get us off the air maybe, or you. Yeah. How seriously should we be taking that?
Well, so I was asked, am I worried about me? And my answer was, I'm worried about all of us. I'm no more worried about me than I am worried about everybody in the country. I think it's bad to have somebody saying, give me as much power as you can in this country so I can use it to go after other Americans. So I can use it to go after these subhuman internal enemies and I'll destroy them. Like, that's just not a good system for anybody. And I don't think anybody's safe if that's the sort of basis on which he wants to get more power.
Well, remember when Nixon had an enemies list? That was a proud moment for a lot of people if they were on the enemies list. Maybe we need to turn it around like that.
Well, I think that if he decides that he's going to go after you or me or anybody who's well known, we have resources. We'll likely be fine. But I think there's a pattern where he picks out individual people and effectively terrorizes them.
That's some of the worst caricatures we've seen of Donald Trump from Rachel Maddow, and it just goes to show you how much of an echo chamber this entire panel is when not a single person from it stops to disagree. Even more than that, it's kind of self-importance that eludes you, especially when most of these armchair political commentators hardly ever leave their study and feel the pulse of public statement. The painting of Donald Trump as some sort of dictator in waiting is just not working anymore with the American people, and that means political tactics will have to change for the party and the media establishment if they intend on making any inroads to the Republican or conservative electorate. But let me know if you agree, because it's an interesting window into how easy it is for self-deception like this to become a tool of political rationalization.